Hello and welcome to Keep Hope Alive podcast. We are in season 15. I'm so excited, and we have a bunch of wonderful guests. And one of those wonderful guests is here today with us. We got Lianna Purjes. I hope I said that right. And she's an empowerment coach. So we're going to be diving into what she does for other people and learning more about her. But first, I got to ask you something. Are you
Okay.
ready? It's a big, important question. How many weddings have you been to in the last 15 years?
Counting my own, probably five or six.
Okay, perfect. So, let's say you're a guest in this scenario and you're going to a ceremony. Let's say it's in a church. When you're walking in, usually there's something to sign. What is that something you have to sign?
The guest book.
Good, good, good. Some people say their life away, and I just laugh and giggle, so it's a fun
Oh.
question to ask. I was like, no, that'd be the bride and groom, not the guest.
Yeah, right.
But definitely. So liveonrecord.com is a sponsor here for us. And so instead of having that guest book, they have a vintage rotary phone they bring. And your guests are able to pick it up, leave a message, say, congratulations on your big day, many years of happiness, or maybe it's a groomsman just saying, dude, it's about time you put a ring on her finger. Let's have fun these years. You're a married man now, whatever they may say. So I call this the gift of voice collection. I love that concept. Now, right next to the phone, they have a QR code that you can scan with your mobile device if the line wasn't moving fast. I mean, you can leave a message on your own phone either before or after. Once they collect all these messages, they will either burn it on a 12-inch vinyl record for you, or they have a keepsake speaker I call the little boom box. And you get the phone number. Sorry, guys, you just got to turn the cute phone back in, but you get the phone number for 1 year. It's throughout the world. Anybody in the world can call it. And you get that number. The plans only start at $99, which is a very good deal. But if it is a wedding and you get that phone number for 1 year, I would like telling all my guests, hey, you know what? It's almost our 1 year anniversary. Call that number back. Wish us a happy anniversary. Sorry, life on record. I had to tell them that. So but other than that, check out their information at www.lifeonrecord.com. All right. So I love your name, by the way. It's
Thank
very
you.
beautiful. It's very different. So who is Lianna?
So, who am I? I am a therapist by training, licensed clinical social worker in Colorado, and I am also an empowerment coach. So I work with adult children of alcoholics to help them build healthy relationships. Yeah, and I think one reason I really love what I do is that I also am an adult child of an alcoholic and I understand the impact that can have on people. So I really enjoy helping other people kind of rebuild after what they went through in childhood.
Yeah, so I'm gonna have a lot of questions. Not, it didn't happen for me, but friends I know they've gone through that through school, public, everything. So, I mean, if you're at a young age and you're seeing this, of course, children got to worry and they're confused by it. Why is my mom and dad doing this? And with drinking comes arguments, right? So they're confused by that too.
Mhm.
So tell us that venture. I mean, from what age could this happen? I mean, probably newborn too,
Yeah.
If you're an alcoholic, you're an alcoholic. But so I guess it varies in the type of people that come and you're helping learn. How does it?
Yeah. So, no, it's a great question. I think a lot of kids may not be consciously aware of a parent drinking or even understand what that means when they're very young. We don't really have a great concept of that as young children, but I talk a lot about how I think it's more about the behaviors that go along with the drinking. Generally speaking, we think of substance use as just being a really unhealthy coping skill. It's a way for people to numb distressing feelings, to distract themselves from what's going on, things like that. So whether, the parent is drinking every day or not, whatever it looks like, there's often these behaviors that go along with that. And I think a lot of what happens really makes kids feel uncomfortable and unsafe, even if they don't exactly know why.
Yeah, definitely. And it's hard as they get older and they start putting pieces together. They're probably saying, my mom is acting different. Like her dad is not a normal behavior. And I mean, will they be put in counseling to learn about this? And do parents actually go and get the help? Or how does,
Mhm.
yeah, I have a lot of questions.
Yeah. Yeah, no, good questions. Yeah, it varies. It really varies a lot. I've worked with a lot of families where this has been an issue. But I've also worked with a lot of kids where that you can tell that's something that's going on, and the kids are kind of inconsistently in and out of therapy, or they don't go to therapy. So yeah, it just varies. But I think, one thing that has one positive that has come out of the pandemic is that it's kind of normalized mental health needs in general a little bit more. So, I'm hoping that it becomes a little more normalized for people to say, okay, my kid is struggling with whatever it is. Let me get them into
Yeah,
therapy.
yeah, eyes wide open. That needs to be. I mean, you should always, I sit down with my kiddos to make sure everybody is on a playing field that is normalized. I always say, do you have questions for me? Anything bugging you at school? How sports really go? Do you really feel like you want to re-enter? But having that open communication helps everybody at play. So seeing like I'm trying to put myself as a person, like a parent, if I was drinking, I think for my feelings, what would I be paranoid? Like they're seeing me, what do
Mm,
they say about me? Are they talking about me at a school? Do the teachers know? Because kids need to find an outlet to talk to somebody about it. So, I wouldn't be surprised if they did get to school and some teachers have brought it up to parents like, hey, I just wanted to let you know that this is being said. And that should be your first sign that, hey, you need to cut back on the drinking. Your child is noticing it. So whether they take that or maybe they're opposite, maybe they drink more. Who knows? I don't
yeah.
know. This
Yeah,
is your field.
it can look a lot of different ways. For me growing up, my mom was the alcoholic in my life, and she hid it very well. I mean, a lot of people with substance use issues get used to hiding it from their loved ones or anyone, because there's a lot of shame that they're feeling. And they don't want people to know about it. So I didn't even know my mother had a drinking problem until I was 20 years old. But then again, there are some families where they're very open about it. So yeah, I mean, it just depends.
Definitely. So with younger kids, I mean, that can transform to depression, anxiety. What other things could they get diagnosed with from seeing this behavior from adults?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Even if they don't witness the parent physically drinking, there can still be an impact. And usually what I have seen most of the time is that um, because the parent is using this substance to numb their own feelings, they sometimes neglect the child, or excuse me, they will sometimes kind of minimize the child's feelings, tell them it's not that big a deal, like little things like that we don't always really think about. And so what we end up seeing, on the flip side with kids, either in school or in other settings, is acting out in different behaviors. So we'll see, it could be aggressive, physical aggression. It could be having trouble in school, lots of things.
Concentrating or mad in general, anger management, maybe. Yeah. So, oh my gosh, yeah, that's just the hardest thing to go through. And, I'm sorry that you went through it too. Oh, I hope you get better. Yeah. There's something going around in the air. Definitely. This has been the weirdest winter. You said you were in Colorado, right? Is that
Yeah,
actually hot?
Colorado. Yeah, it's like almost 60 degrees today. It got really warm.
It was 89 a couple days ago here in Texas. People wearing shorts, baby hat. I saw a mom pushing her baby in a little what spring onesie or something. It was beautiful, but I'm like,
Yeah.
whoa, this is gonna mean bad weather later on for us.
It's only
So
February, yeah.
yeah, definitely. So, I mean, the empowerment part of pushing people to thrive to their best, is there a program that you offer people who are seeking to get the help and, you know, kind of get through this and steer a different way? Do you do this in person? Do you also do it in Zoom?
Yeah, so I have an online group program, and it is a 3-month program that really focuses on helping adults who either grew up with addiction or other kinds of dysfunction in the home build the skills they need to have healthy relationships. I think for a lot of people who grew up this way, a lot of the pieces that end up being missing are communication skills, being able to set boundaries, being able to, communicate your needs to a partner or a friend or whoever so you don't get walked all over, not people pleasing so much. The people pleasing comes
Yeah.
up a bit. Things like that, I think sometimes can be missing because a lot of those skills are developed or start to get developed when we're children. So when you grow up with a lot of dysfunction, whatever that looks like, you might really be missing out on those opportunities.
Yeah, and it's good to have a structure. So when you're going through the preteen into the teenagers, I always say daughters need their moms the most. It doesn't matter what age they are, So I made it at a very young age. I remember saying, if I ever have kids, I'm going to be right by their side. If they ask me for advice, I'll give it to them, but I will never be there to be like, nah, or mean to them. I don't want to ever be that mom, but I don't want to be the pleaser all the time. So I have to show structure, have my boundaries up, and give guidance to where it's needed and stuff. And, I look at it one day, they'll be appreciative, of that. So, but it was the weirdest thing, girl. I will tell you something. I had to ask my kids a question, and my doctors for the past 5 years, I just cannot sleep for me, but the wonderful medicine of Ambien, whatever. Whatever. But I will tell you, I had this dream last night that a big tornado was coming right at me. I saw right at the window. There was no sirens, and you could just see it. Maybe it's because of the movie Double Twisters coming out, or they're saying April 1st, April Fool's Day, we're going to be dark. I don't know. I don't believe in any of that stuff, but I think those were triggers for my dreaming. And I saw the tornado coming, but it made a right, and I thought it was by my brother's house. So in my dream, I called my brother and I was like, there's Twister. It's big. It's coming for you. And all he says is, Nadine, go back to sleep. I was like, dude, like that's when you're not being heard. So I was asking my kids today. Here's your choices. If I told you a twister was coming right for your house, A, would you say, thanks for taking cover? Or B, go back to sleep? And my kids say, they would tell me to go back to sleep. But, I had to have that great old communication with them. No, this is real. This is not me playing. Why would do both, and they're trying to make up stories, but I think the honesty of saying, hey, I have an addiction. I am an alcoholic. I will do my best by you if the kids are seeing it, and I will go get help and get this fixed because I know this is hurting you.
Mhm.
So, in my eyes, that would be the right approach for a parent who is drinking, who has kids, to own up to that and notice it, but they have to be willing to do it for themselves, is what I see too. So it's like you're in between. It sounds like you will teach that empowerment to get there, if you're the parent and how to overcome that. Um, so with the classes, how many weeks or is it months does it usually take? I'm thinking back to the show Mom. I used to watch
Mhm.
that too.
So my program is a 3-month program,
3 months.
and I found that that's a good amount of time for people to kind of get the basics. I do a lot of education on trauma and how the brain works with the stress response. So I find that 3 months is a good amount of time to really kind of understand the basics, how to implement these communication skills and boundaries, and start practicing that. And obviously we're all still growing and learning every day, right? There's no such thing
Yeah,
as an endpoint, but I found that 3 months is a good chunk of time to really kind of set people on the right path.
that is very good. So what advice would you, give to kids, best advice, and what would you give as good advice to parents, who want to
Yeah.
make a change?
Oh, it's a great question. I think for kids, if you feel like you need someone to talk to, that's not your parents, it's not your family, then just ask. A lot of
Yeah,
times there are resources in school, even if you can't get them outside of school. So just talk to your counselors, your school social worker, whoever it is, and just see what resources are available for you. Because
yeah,
there's a lot more out there, I think, these days in terms of mental health support for kids than there ever used to be. So definitely, ask about it. Can't hurt to ask. Um,
yeah,
and I'd say kind of like what you were saying before for parents, like, there's such a thing as, what in the mental health community we call good enough parenting, of this idea of like, listen, no parent's going to be perfect. It's not possible. We're all human. We're going to mess up. We're going to, everyone yells at their kids sometimes. Everyone screws up. It happens. But the point is, are you a quote unquote good enough parent in the sense that you have a rupture in your relationship with your child, but then you repair it, you work on it, or you are working
yeah,
on improving, like that's really the point, is are you working on improving? And so for parents who are struggling with substance use, I like to say, I mean, look, at this is a disease. We know this. And it's very, very hard. This is a very hard disease to have.
yes,
And there are a lot of resources out there. So, if you're really wanting to get better, let's get you better. There's a lot of
yeah.
different ways to do this. And I think, like you pointed out, I think depending on the age of the kids, I think it's good to be honest with them and say, hey, like this is something I'm struggling with, but I'm working on it. And I
You
think,
turn into the role model of how
yeah,
to get fixed all of a sudden. And that is positive energy. So, not, you're right, not everybody. I'm a social drinker. If it's a holiday, Christmas, of course, I like eggnog, or, I'll have a glass of wine because it soothes me. It helps me sleep too, or at least try to fall asleep. But, I'm not at fault because I want a glass of wine every now and then. If there was a birthday party, it's about being responsible too. I've heard so many different stories, like people who've actually even got pulled over for a DUI, but they were roofied. And they don't drink much, but they got roofied and they have to pay that price. So when the kids find out, they're like, you're going to think whatever, but you have to explain to kids also that this is actually something that people do in this world. It's not nice, but you have to educate them. The
Yeah.
younger generation, and I love TikTok, but they're learning on TikTok. They're learning on Instagram. They can learn on Facebook and YouTube, any of this. And
Yeah.
all that we say is be careful out there. And I would strongly suggest kids will end up bottling feelings, or they say they're scared, they didn't want to talk about it because they're afraid to make the parent mad. But that's not the truth. Parents want to hear from the kids when there is something troubling them. So if there's something troubling my son, I'll be like, "You do this, mom." I go, "Huh?" And then he goes, "Yeah, you snore." I go, "Girls don't snore." But I have fun with it. And sometimes it's good to hear it if we're talking too much, or maybe if we drive too fast in one area, you learn from it, you slow down. And it's the same thing. If you're drinking too much, then you need to slow down too.
Yeah, and
So
I think it's good, like you said, as a role model to your kids to, it's you're gonna mess up and that's okay. The idea is not to hide your mistakes. The idea is to model for your kids acknowledging the mistakes or the things you want to change and saying, huh, okay, here's what I'm gonna do next time. Because that's healthy and just normal for all of us.
exactly. And that is so important. Also, really quick before we go any further, I have another question for you off topic.
Huh?
Have you seen these yet?
I have briefly seen them, but I don't know much about.
Okay, they're on Facebook. They're called snap bands. This first one says faith on it, and the second one says hope on it. And really quick about the first one with the word faith for snap bands, you can only get that one using a promo code of KHA for Keep Hope Alive. So it's brand new to the market. But let me tell you a little bit about these bracelets. Now, this is going to relate to what we're talking about. The world is a stressful place for everyone with work, school, relationships, health issues, finances, the nightly news. There's anxiety every day. Negative thoughts can keep popping into our head over and over again. I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy of anyone loving me. Bad things always happen to me. If you ever have these types of thoughts, you are not alone. More than 40 million Americans are diagnosed with an anxiety disorder. Anxieties, worries, and fears can stop you from finding inner peace and achieving your true potential. You deserve to live your best life. Finally, there's an amazing new bracelet called Snap Bands that was invented to help you reduce anxiety, control OCD, and calm stress. Snap bands are a cognitive behavioral therapy tool based on proven brain neuroscience, and the way Snap bands works is amazing. Snap band bracelets look like a stylish piece of jewelry on your wrist, but its unique design actually hides a secret elastic band that sits right on your inner wrist, which is a pressure point of your brain's nervous system. When you give the elastic a light tug, you feel a very gentle, soft vibration on your inner wrist. A gentle physical sensation is all you need to reduce the anxiety, and here's why. Did you know that the human brain can only deal with one emergency at a time? Well, whenever you feel an unwanted negative thought in your head and gently snap the elastic on your inner wrist, it forces your brain to focus on the gentle physical sensation you feel, which instantly disrupts the unwanted negative thought from your brain. This gives you the freedom to reset your mind with a positive mental focus. The mantra word on your snap bands bracelets helps you to refocus and reset. Now, there are eight, including faith, but faith, remember KHA. So we'll say seven. The different mantra words are believe, blessing, dream, fearless, hope, love, and my thing froze, but there's so many. So what's so great about these bracelets are they are made out of vegan leather. So if you have sensitive skin, it's not going to interfere. When you snap I've had mine on for, let's see, over a month and a half. Yeah, it honestly does reset my thought process. And today I went on a job interview, world. And this is so funny. I was driving in the car and I'm looking at my bracelets going, I'm going to get the job. I'm going to hope and pray and faith. I got the job. I'm not saying bracelets are going to give you a job, but it's a good, and it resets your focus. You can breathe. If you have the confidence to go out there and set for your goals, you can do it. Now, these are also waterproof. So I'm doing dishes, taking a shower, but I can swim with them also. But visit their website at www.snapbands.com, and that's SNAPPBANDZ.com. All proceeds to give a portion to mental illness organizations to help out too. So let's get back to it, Leanna.
All right.
So, I mean, processing away a kid takes in stuff, that's really important to me. I think, as I'm going through that commercial, being neglected is a huge thing. And I don't think parents really see that or know they're doing it, especially when it comes into families meeting with other family members or friends or coworkers. They're usually going out having a few beers and saying, "Hey kids, why don't you go play over there, go do something." Remember one time I was visiting family and we got told just to stay upstairs. But what nobody knew is like all they're doing is drinking beer. Like, why are we sentenced to a room? And I couldn't say anything at all, but it hurt me so bad to this day. Why do we come on vacation if we can't enjoy being on a mountain and trying to take a hike? Those were things in my head. Does it stick with you? Of course, it's stuck with me because I know better. I would never do that to my kids or my grandchild coming. I'm always going to be an active parent no matter what. Like if I drink, it's not going to be in front of my child. Maybe at Thanksgiving, if we have, a glass at the table with our turkey, yes, but I'm not going to down a bottle or anything around my kids. So it's very important when to do it. But the neglect, I mean, I'm sure you've had kids that have come to you with this. Is there a best practice for them to help not be set in their brain? I mean, could that be part of PTSD too?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. So,
No.
yeah, and I mean, some once in a while, hey, kids, go play over there. The adults are going to hang out and have a couple beers is fine. It's not
Mm-hmm.
that big a deal. It's it's when it becomes a regular occurrence, or
Yeah.
really when the child feels like they can't go to their parents with problems or to talk about things or talk about their feelings for comfort, any of those things, because they just know, okay, parent is not going to be available. It's really the trauma that comes with neglect is, when we're talking about like repeated issues of or incidents of kids not feeling seen, heard, or loved. That's really what it
Yep.
comes down to. So, again, that doesn't happen after, a couple of get-togethers when the kids are told to go play. That happens when it's an ongoing occurrence. And it does rewire the brain. We know from a lot of research in trauma and attachment and all these brain scans and everything that children who are traumatized at a young age, that they do have different brain development. And it often the way it shows up is, or the first time it'll show up sometimes is in school when they go to preschool or kindergarten, because they have a harder time focusing than peers their age. They have a harder time regulating their emotions, things like that. So, and then often what happens in the schools is that they might get labeled having a behavior problem or, some other kind of disability. And sometimes that is the way they end up getting some services and some help is because they're acting out in school. Um, But that absolutely can happen and does happen to a lot of kids. And then what that looks like in adulthood is then as adults, they have a really hard time with attachment. So they, like for me, for example, I did this push and pull thing in all my relationships and my friendships, romantic relationships, everything, where I desperately wanted to be close to people. And then when they started to get close, I'd do something to push them away. And it wasn't conscious. It was just this thing I did, and I didn't understand it at the time. But things like that can happen, or difficulty setting boundaries, difficulty speaking up for yourself, communication issues, like all those things pop up in our adult relationships.
Yeah.
Um, and while, it would be great if we could get to every kid when they're young to try and, work on therapy and resolve these things at a younger age, that's, not the reality. So that's why I started my program, because I really wanted to help adults figure out how they can build healthier relationships.
So I'm gonna be like, tell me something good. So have you, the people you've helped come back and say, I did your steps, it did make a difference. I see this and this and this. So are
Yeah,
you allowed to
yeah.
give examples?
Well, I can't give names, obviously, but
I know, no names,
yeah.
just example.
Yeah, no, I mean, I had a client who, she grew up with some very significant trauma, and she was having a really hard time with her partner because they loved each other very much and he was very supportive, but she would do this push-pull thing, and she very easily got overwhelmed with feelings. And she had gone to therapy for many years, and it had gotten a little better, but it still wasn't where she wanted it to be. So I did a lot of education with her about, okay, here's the human brain. This is what happens when we experience stress. These are the chemicals that get released into the body. This is what's going on for you. And now how can we figure out how you can regulate through that and figure out a way to tell your brain that you're actually safe, you're okay. And then
Hmm.
you won't have these reactions quite as much. But I think for her, she just really needed some of these concrete, practical tools to make it happen. And so that made a huge difference for her.
Wow, that's good. That's good. I love when you can help somebody out. Like it just has this empowerment. Now, I've talked to other people who do podcasts, and that's the one thing we talk about. We may not ever make a dime, but we're letting people be heard. And that's something me and my friend would talk about for 5 years. We just want to be heard and have our stories shared with the world, you know. Fortunately, she passed, but here
Oh,
comes the creation of Keep Hope Alive. And I tried to do this before podcasts were a thing called Wedcasts, and interviewed like wedding specialists and showcased their services and everything. But here comes the world of podcasts, and I'm like, ooh, it's not going to cost them a lot. Probably nothing. And I can still do interviews, but I think with all, and I shouldn't say think, I know with all the interviews I've done, I have learned so much about life and people in general, and the struggles that are out there. They're real. It shows compassion when you can be brave and talk about it. So that is important. And it's people like you that help out end this, but you put the extra mile into it to make sure they're really doing okay. And I can see that in you, which is great. So
yeah, thank you. No, I mean it is really rewarding to do this kind of work and help people. And there have been, it can be stressful sometimes too. And there have been moments I've thought, I'll just, work in an office doing computery things. And I'm like, no, I'd get bored. I really like doing this work.
exactly. That's the one thing, learning this and doing this and seeing the impact, I know I needed a full-time job. I'm happy I got a full-time job to start Monday, but I am now reconstructing like, how am I going to do this? It's going to be on my days off, and I gotta still do time management. You gotta have time for you. I have a loving boyfriend. I need to spend time with him. I gotta spend time with my kiddos. So I was telling him I just need paper and a pen and a draw out the whole year where I'm gonna be here, 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 be on call here, here. So,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
definitely. So, but gosh, okay, so if people want to contact you, get in touch to you, what's the best way they can do that?
Yeah, they can email me. My email is Lianna, and that's spelled Lianna at coachingwithlianna.com. And they could visit my website at coachingwithlianna.com, or also find me on Facebook. I run a free Facebook group where I do a lot of free live trainings and give resources and tips and stuff. That one's called Adult Children of Alcoholics Build Healthy Relationships.
Okay.
So yeah, any of those ways works.
Okay, yeah, and I will add that link to everything so people can find you very fast, which is good. But no podcast or anything yet.
No, I admire you for doing the podcast. It sounds fun, but I know nothing about podcasting.
I love it, but it is time consuming. I love it, and I believe in sharing these stories right away with the world so they can hear it. There's going to be that one person that's sitting there listening to this going, finally. So, I had to do that with me. I will be honest, I've never listened to a podcast, but I got catfished and I really didn't know what that meant.
Oh no.
And it was done with a celebrity overseas that it turned out there's 10 different accounts. So it's kind of like I knew this was happening. Why does it happen? Why does it keep talking? I'm like, nope, nope, go away, delete, delete. And I'm so sorry this is happening to you. Somebody stole the account. And I go, that's fine. But then they would write something, oh, well, I'm glad we're talking for the first time. And I'm like, no, you talked to me on this other account. So finally, I remember I was at my son's football practice and I was like, Catfish. And I believe it was MTV had a podcast called Catfish. And I was
Wow.
just listening to it, watching my son train. And I'm like, oh my gosh, yes, yes, yes. I could check off everything. This catfisher went far enough to do a call with me, and it looked like him, but the phone turned off right away. Second, I could see the face. But you know what? That has to be AI using somebody's face on top. There's no way. Like I still to this day, I think about it and I see still on Facebook so many different accounts. I was like, it's sad. There needs to be who has time to catfish somebody? Are you that bored? And why would somebody like us try to entertain it? Yes, I get a lot of people that want to be on the show. I can't be a people pleaser. That's where it comes all the time. So I noticed that. So boundaries had to be taught to me this year and energy. I had to take in people's energy, but let it bounce off certain ways, or I can make myself sick. A nurse told me that, and I was like, wow, I'm still gonna do what I do, but wow, I didn't know that. And so I kind
Yeah.
of see it in different lights and everything. But yeah, definitely. I will get all this information. You can visit at www.keephopealivepodcast.com. If you have any questions for us, you can call 833-780-HOPE. And that is 4673. And I promise she's going to get the messages. We're going to create fun and get her back on and answer any questions that you may have. Also, quickly want to thank our other sponsors on the show who make Keep Hope Alive afloat. As I mentioned, we have lifeonrecord.com, your interactive guest book for your events, and snapbands.com, the bracelets that reduce the OCD, anxiety, PTSD, and help with cognitive thinking. We also have Ogden Ventures LLC. Marcus Ogden, he is a former NFL player. keynote speaker, best-selling author, and podcast host. He is very game on. He's very informative, but check him out and excuse me. Um, I'm going to spell his name out because I kept calling him Marquise, like a diamond or something. So it's www. Marcus is Marqueus, Ogden, Ogden.com. Our next one is bridalshowsinc.com. Naomi has been running this for years and years and years. These trade shows are wonderful throughout Texas. She gets people out of state that come to these also. But she has about 5 or 6 out of the year, and vendors will come and meet with potential people who want to hire them for events, but they get to showcase their work. There's always a beautiful fashion show. I will say there's black wedding gowns this year. I was like, whoa, maybe I'm old school at age 46. I was like, okay. Well, I know ivory and white, but the black were, I don't know. I'm still old, ain't I? I gotta get used to that one. Somebody who makes wedding gowns, come on to the show and let's talk about it. Our next one is Miles and Smiles Events.com. Miss Deborah Rush. Her background is she's an investigator. With her events, she does handwriting analysis and lipstick readings, and she is 100% accurate, but she makes every event so fun. And just watching other people get their like readings, they're like, hey, how did you know that? It's just so fun to watch her. So check out her work. Our next one is Bryce Harney, www.brycemagic.com. You've probably seen him on TV. He's a magician, a mind mentalist, reader. He does big corporate events, parties, and church events and stuff like that. I tell everybody, hey, go to YouTube, type up Bryce Harney, see some of his tricks. He's amazing. Our next one is richmondpunch.net. He graduated from the Juilliard. He's a violinist for over 30 years. He's performed in front of 1 million people before and had 2 slots on Lifetime shows for the background music with the violin playing. So I know he's out on tour promoting, and I just love his energy. It's so great. So you can find on my Facebook group also where these postings are. So you can follow them if you want to. Our last one is TK Hair Salon at www.tkhairsalon.com, located in good old Plano, Texas. So when you come to Texas, you got to get your hair cut. Men, women, children, they do updos for the women. If you have a special event, coloring, perms, eyebrows, lips, they are so friendly there. Please check them out. So wherever you guys find your podcast, you'll be able to find us. So once again, I want to thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story and how you help everybody. And, you know, kudos to you. It takes a strong person like yourself to be hearing everybody's story and helping them and giving them the best advice ever. So thank
Well, thank you so
you.
much for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. All right, guys. Until next time, love and light. Bye.